Today's lesson is 5.6. We're dividing decimals. Our essential question: how can you place the decimal point in the quotient? When you multiply both the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10, the quotient stays the same. So let's look. If I have 6 divided by 3 equals 2. If I multiply 6 times 10 and I multiply 3 times 10, I get 60 divided by 30, but the answer still stays 2. If I take 60 and I multiply it times 10, and 30 and I multiply it times 10, I get 600 divided by 300, but my answer remains 2. If I have 120 divided by 30, and I divide it by 120 by 1/10 and 30 by 1/10, I get 12 divided by 3. My answer is still 4. If I divide 12 by 1/10 and 3 by 1/10, I get 1 and 2/10 and 3/10, but my answer still remains 4. So let's unlock the problem. Matthew has 72 cents. He wants to buy stickers that cost 8 cents each. How many stickers can he buy? Well, what do you get when you multiply the hundredths to get a whole number? Well, when you multiply the hundredths to get a whole number, you get 100. So let's multiply both the dividend and the divisor by the power of 10. That makes the divisor a whole number, and then we're going to divide. So first we're going to turn this number into a whole number and this number into a whole number. So 72 hundredths times 100 is 72, and 8 hundredths times 100 is 8, right? So when I do 72 hundredths divided by 8, I get 9. I get 9. And 72 divided by 8 is 9. So Matthew can divide by 9 stickers. So let's explain. How do you know that the quotient 72 hundredths and 8 hundredths is equal to the quotient 72 divided by 8? And I know this because both the divisor and the dividend were multiplied by 100, so the quotients are equal. Because remember, back at the very beginning, we said that as long as you're multiplying both sides by the same number, so if I multiply both sides by 10 or I multiply both sides by 100, I'm going to get the same answer, okay? Okay, let's try this. We're going to divide 56 hundredths by 7 tenths. So first we're going to multiply the divisor by the power of 10 to make it a whole number. Then we're going to multiply the dividend by the same power of 10. So 7 tenths times the 10, power of 10, right, equals 7. And 56 hundredths times the power of 10 is 5 and 6 tenths, because we're just moving the decimal over one space, right? Move that one over one space and that one over one space. So as I'm dividing, see how I moved it over one space and moved that one over one space. So I'm going to put my decimal right above, just like in the lesson before, and I'm going to multiply. 7 goes into 5. Well, it can't, so I'm going to put a 0 up there, right? But 7 can go into 56, and 7 goes into 56 8 times. 8 times 7 is 56. I subtract, and I get nothing left over, right? Example. Sherry hikes on a Pacific Coast trail. She plans to hike 3 72 hundredths mile. If she hikes at an average of 1 2/10 miles per hour, how long will she hike? So we're going to divide 3 72 hundredths divided by 1 2/10. So let's estimate. 3 72 hundredths is kind of like 4, and this is close to 1, right? So 1 goes into 4 about how many times? Well, 4 times. So step 1, we're going to multiply the divisor by the power of 10 to make it a whole number. Then we're going to multiply the dividend by the same power of 10. Because remember, we're just going to move it over so that we have a whole number. You don't want to divide with a number that has a decimal on the outside and a decimal on the inside. So you want to change the outside number into a whole number. In order to do that, you have to move the decimal over how many ever spaces until it becomes a whole number. Whatever you do on this side, you have to do on this side. So if I multiply this by the power of 10, I have to multiply this by the power of 10. If I multiply this by the power of 100, I have to multiply this one by the power of 100. So let's do this. 1 2/10 times 10 is going to give me 12. And then if I move this decimal over 1, I'm going to have to move this decimal over 1. So 3 and 7200ths times 10 is going to be 37.2. Okay, so let's do this. 12 can't go into 3, but it can go into 37. And it goes into 37 3 times. And 3 times 12 is 36. And 37 minus 36 is 1. Now I'm going to make sure that I bring down my 2, right? And so now I have 12 going into 12, which is 1. It goes in 1 time. It goes in 1 time. 1 times 12 is 12 with nothing left over. Now the one thing I got to make sure I do is my decimal. See, my decimal is right there. So my decimal is going to go right above. Okay, exactly where it is in the spot. So my answer is going to be 3 1/10 hour. So describe what happens to the decimal point in the divisor and in the dividend when you multiply by 10. Well, each decimal point moves 1 place to the right. Explain how you would have used the estimate to place the decimal point. Well, I could have used the estimate 4, right, to place the decimal point right after the 3 to show that there are 3 1s and 1/10. Let's try this. Let's divide and check our answer. So we have 14 tenths times 1 and 96 tenths. We're going to multiply the divisor by, well, let's see, I have to move it over how many spaces? 1, 2. In order to move this over 2 spaces, I'm going to have to multiply it by 100, right? If I move this decimal over 2 spaces, I have to move this decimal over 2 spaces. My decimal is going to be right there now, okay? So 14 can't go into 1, but it can go into 19 1 time. And 1 times 14 is 56. No, sorry, 1 times 14 is 14. I subtract and I get 5. Then I bring down my 6 and I get 56. 14 goes into 56 4 times. And 4 times 14, let's try that. 14 times 4, we get 16. 4, look at that, it's exactly 56. Subtract, I get nothing left over. Okay, so I get exactly 14. So let's do the decimal on this. 14 times 14, which is what my answer is here. This times this, right? 4 times 4 is 16. Carry my 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Then I'm going to put, now that I'm moving over here, right, I'm going to my tenths place. I'm going to put my placeholder. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. So now I have 6 plus nothing, which is 6. 5 plus 4, which is 9. 1 plus nothing, which is 1. And I'm going to move my decimal space over 2 spaces, because that's what it is here. So I'm going to go 1, 2. And I'm going to get 1.96, which is exactly what this answer is. So I checked my answer, and it worked out perfectly. All right, so let's do our share and show. We're going to copy and complete the pattern. So we have 45 divided by 9. Well, 45 divided by 9 is 5, right? Let's put my 5 in here. So 4.5 divided by 0.9 is also going to be 5. And 0.45 divided by 0.09 is also going to be 5, right? Because I multiplied it by the power of 10, and then I multiplied it again by the power of 10 on both sides. So 175 divided by 25 is 7. And then if I move my decimal point over here and I move my decimal point over there, which is going to be 2.5, I'm also going to get 7. If I move my decimal point over one more time, I'm going to get 1.75 divided by 0.25, and I'm still going to get 7. Over here I have 164 divided by 2. I'm going to get 82. And 164.4, moving my decimal point over, and 0.2, I'm still going to get 82. Move my decimal point over one more time, I'm going to have 1.64 divided by 0.02, and I'm going to get 82. So let's go ahead and divide. Let's do the regular division. So 1.6, remember I don't want to have any decimals on my outside, so I'm going to move it over 1 by dividing by the power of 10, so this is actually going to be 16. So whatever I do on the outside, I have to do on the inside, so I'm going to move this one over by 1, and my decimal is going to be right up here, right after the 96. So now let's solve. 16 can't go into 9, but 16 can go into 96. About how many times? Well, let's try 16 times 7 and see what we get. 6 times 7 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 11. And that's too much, right? So let's try 16 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Oops. And 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 96. Oh, it goes in perfectly. So the answer is going to be 6. So 96, I subtract, I get nothing. So the answer is 6 because the decimal point's after the 6, right? So you don't have to worry about putting the decimal on that one. So on the next one, I'm going to move my decimal over one space. If I move it over one space on there, I've got to move it over one space there. So now my decimal is going to go in between the 2 and the 4. So I have 3, can't go in a 0. 3 can't go in a 2, so I'm going to put a 0 above there. But 3 can go in a 4. It goes in one time. 3 times 4, no, sorry. 3 can go into 24, and 3 goes into 24 8 times. And 3 times 8 is 24, and I subtract and I get nothing left over, so my answer is 0.8, or you could say 0.8. So next I have 1.5 going into 3.45. Again, I have to move my decimal over one space here, so I'm going to move it over one space here, and now my decimal is going to go up in between the 4 and the 5. 15 can't go into 3, but it can go into 34, and 15 goes into 34 about 2 times, right? 2 times 15 is 30, leaving me with 4 left over. I'm going to bring down my 5. 15 goes into 45 3 times. 3 times 15 is 45, and I've got nothing left over, right? So the answer is 2.3, or 2 3/10. You can do the on your own. If you need me, I'm going to be on the carpet, and you can also work with partners. All right, thanks, guys, and good luck.